This segment brought to you by Kansas Farm Bureau, the voice of agriculture. To join today or for more information, go to kfb.org or find us on Facebook and Twitter.
Up first today, Kyle Bauer visits with Paul Cornett about the recovery of cattle stolen from an eastern Kansas ranch.
Hi, this is Kyle Bauer. I get the opportunity to visit with Paul Cornett. He's with the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture. He's a special investigator specializing in cattle theft, and we are at the Oklahoma City National Stockyards giving our reward down here because there was a lot of people that came together very quickly and were able to catch cattle thieves here.
Yes, sir. We got a call from the National Commission Company here at the Oklahoma City Stockyards, Oklahoma National Stockyards in Oklahoma City, and one of the employees happened to recognize a brand on some cattle that were stolen out of eastern Kansas, almost to Missouri. The cattle had actually been, the owner of the cattle had borrowed money, it's my understanding, from the National Commission Company. They have a program where they loan money to ranchers, and these cattle showed up and they had the brand that this employee recognized as being the brand of the National Livestock Credit Corps, and he actually called the owner of the cattle in Kansas and said, "Is there some reason your cattle are in Oklahoma City because they're not scheduled to be sold?" And the man said, "I've just left the sheriff's office. Those cattle are stolen." And so, those are the kind of breaks we like. Usually we're behind the eight ball a little bit and trying to catch up. And I was actually on my way here. I work the northwest part of Oklahoma, live in northwest Oklahoma. I'm about an hour south of the Kansas line. And I was coming here I was investigating a theft I was working on. So I was close by. Our chief agent at that time, Jerry Flowers, he lives here and works in the central part. He's now retired. And Agent Eddie Davenport, he works South Central. We all met here at the same time. The cattle we told them to go ahead and sell the cattle, run them through the auction ring. Those cattle sold. The two defendants, Anthony Whitley and Jasmine Boone, came into the National Commission Company to pick up their check, and when they entered the office, we approached them and placed them under arrest for selling stolen cattle. And so it worked out beautifully. Usually it's several days before we get to catch up to them, but it's fun when you get to catch them when they come in for the money. That's pretty cut and dried when that happens.
When these folks, when you filed charges on them, though, it was a federal court.
Yes, sir. It was the cattle. By the time we got through interviewing them, at the end of the day, we'd pretty well connected them to the theft of over 100 head of cattle. Oklahoma, Kansas, Arkansas, Missouri. So they had taken stolen property across state lines on multiple occasions. So one of our agents, Ricky Rushing, he's also on the federal stolen property task force. He filed the charges, presented those to the federal prosecutor, and they've since, my understanding, made a plea agreement, and I don't remember what time they got, but they got quite a bit of time in prison for that.
One thing that's you've mentioned as you put the whole thing together, there was a lot of people involved with this, but you get calls all the time on something that doesn't quite look right.
Yes, and that's what I tell people. If whether you're the rancher, the farmer, the owner of the livestock auction, agriculture, cattle people, and there's so many of these thefts that we work that are involved with people stealing cattle and selling them at the livestock auction to buy illegal narcotics, methamphetamine specifically, many times. Most times those guys don't look like your average farmer and rancher. And I have a sale barn in Enid, Oklahoma, Northwestern Livestock, and the girl that works in there, she's actually from Kansas. And about 3 years ago, she called me on at least 2 or maybe 3 times that 1 year. It's been 3 times total, and I think they was all in the same year. She knows cattle people, and she called. She said, "You need to come over here. These people brought cattle in. They're from eastern Kansas. Something's not right." They passed multiple livestock auctions to bring them to Enid, and it's a good sale barn, but that's not a normal practice. You just know she knew something wasn't right. And all 3 of those groups of cattle were stolen out of Kansas, and they brought them into Oklahoma to sell. 3 different groups of suspects.
Thanks, Kyle. Be sure to stay tuned for this week's Kansas soybean update coming up next here on Farm Factor.